Okay, greetings everybody. Sorry about Tuesday's class, and I decided that most of the things that we need to cover in class will be best not put on the video, that I need to be kind of in your presence. Of course, I'll be live streaming the class on Thursday tomorrow anyway, but what I thought I'd do today and what is best done over this media, I think, is just discussing a little bit more about the choral music evaluation that you all did of the Shoshone Love Song. And everybody's pretty much on track for that. There are a couple of things that when you're assessing choral music, I'd like you to be a little more clear on, particularly the issue between range and tessitura. But let's start with just the assessment of the form of Shoshone Love Song, because it's very straightforward. And as you know, form has both the macro and the micro. And I think both are pretty evident in this. It's really an A and a B section. The difference, I think, is that it's quite clear that it's A, and that you have two A sections that are literally the same. And the way the composer treats them in the first form is that it's pretty much unison at first, and then the second A, or the repetition of that part of the melody, is completely harmonized, and then B is the contrasting section. So let's listen to Shoshone Love Song, and I'll put that on, and here we are. So we have this 4-bar introduction. And as I mentioned, this first A section is entirely in unison until we get to the very end of the phrase. Here's the A2 harmonized. Melody is identical, note for note. And here is the B section. Okay, so hopefully that's quite clear. The best way to think about it in those A's is to just remove everything but the soprano, who have the melody all the way through the piece, and sing or play through that melody. Are identical except for the harmonization. Now, I mean, if you want to be really technical, you could put A prime, B. Then the strophic part is that the form repeats on slightly different text. In fact, even that issue is pretty minor. So let's listen to the second half of the piece, which has, I would suggest, A, just like we encountered before, and then another A. And then finally, the B section is extended, measure 57, that B repeats itself with a little coda at the end. So that's how the composer ends the pieces, with a little coda, an extension of the B. So it's A, B extension, coda is how I would categorize that. So let's listen to that. Here's that 4-bar interlude now. Here's the first A. And here's the completely harmonized A section. Here's the B section. Here's the B extension. Here's the coda with an added final cadence. It's a very tiny coda. Okay. So that simple one, a very simple piece, makes the piece incredibly accessible and a variety of ways, as we'll discuss when I'm with you in class, about how to approach the first rehearsal and then layering on additional rehearsals that follow using a piece of music like this with your choir. So going back to an evaluation of the parts themselves, remember that for each choral part, there is a range, and that is a given. I mean, there's one lowest note and there's one highest note for each of the soprano, alto, tenor, and bass respectively. So, I mean, and that's not up for debate. So it's just a matter of finding it and going through. And sometimes, not so much in this piece, but in other pieces, you're going to find that the lowest note or the highest pitch in a piece maybe occurs literally once in 10 pages of music. And so sometimes it takes a little bit of time to hunt for those. But the main thing to remember is that when you're writing in this system using the C4 as middle C and then, you know, lower or higher, you have to remember and take into account the accidentals in the piece and or the key signature. So many of you got the lowest note correct for a couple of the voice parts. For example, the tenor's lowest note is an E flat 3, but some of you left for the bass's lowest note is a D flat 3, and some of you left the flat off. So that's understandable, but remember to do that, because then it sounds like, well, even though there's an E flat in the key signature, they never sing that. And they do. So just be accurate in that way. Just check the accidentals in the piece and also the key signature so that you're accounting for those things. Tessitura, as we've discussed, and as I think everybody understands the concept, tessitura differs from range in that it may be that a part only sings the lowest note once in an entire piece. That does not put that note in the tessitura, because tessitura refers to the majority of the time. So which span of notes in any given part does the singer sing most of the time? And while that is an estimate, it's easiest if you kind of go to the keyboard as well and find a span of about a fifth. At least that's the way the things work in this piece. The soprano span is about F4, the F above middle C, to the next highest C, C5. The alto span is approximately C4, middle C, to F4. You could probably put, you know, maybe E flat, but the F is sung a lot. That's usually the top note, and very occasionally is the G sung. So that's why I would say C4 to F4. The tenor is another fifth, F3 to C4 or middle C. And if you go around the horn for the whole piece and you look, what note does that tenor usually start on? It's the F. Not the E flat 3, which is literally the lowest pitch in that part, but it's almost always starting on an F. And then up to about the C4 is usually the top of the range. And then finally, the bass is usually around D flat 3. So D flat 3, the D flat below middle C, up the fifth to A flat 3. So again, if you kind of play through it, you'll find your hand on the keyboard in those intervallic spans that I just mentioned for each of those parts. Go through it and try that out. If you're doubting that or think, well, why isn't the note above or the note below? Remember, it's most of the time, where does that part sit? So range, the extremes. What is the span from the lowest to the highest note in each part? And then tessitura, where does that singer part spend most of its time between which notes? And hopefully, if you use that as an example for this piece, it'll make sense to you if you go to the keyboard and find that out. So a couple of other things about when you fill these choral music evaluation sheets out. You want the name of the publisher. So the name of the publisher in this case is found on the cover, Hal Leonard, because it will do, the number will do you no good if you are going to find it by publisher and publisher number. Completely different in terms of there might be an AH number. Other publishers like Hal Leonard just uses numbers in their system. So the clearinghouse, the place like sheetmusicplus.com or JW Pepper, or if you go to Samson Ayers House of Music in Spokane, Washington, or wherever you go, they're going to need to know the publisher and then the number. So be sure that you have both of those on there. Why is it SAT with a B in parentheticals? It's because, and what I'm doing is I'm reading what the publisher has written on the outside of the piece of music, the Shoshone Love Song. And he has put the publisher has put the base B in parentheses because for the most part, the bass line doesn't have to be sung to be performed. And that is because the bass line is structured so that it follows very much the bass line in the piano. The bass line of the piano may be an octave lower, but it is usually covered that way. The other thing that's remarkable about this piece in comparison to other choral music copies that you'll buy or that you can peruse is that this has the chord symbols, the pop style chord symbols above the piano part, which is really nice because you don't have to sit and do an evaluation yourself. And you can, quickly translate that to, try to teach, okay, what are the basic key, what are the basic chords that are in the function of the harmonies, and you can maybe incorporate that into your teaching. So that's really helpful. Also helpful if you're at the piano and you just want to kind of chord along, but you don't want to look down at the keyboard the whole time and, play the whole piano part. Because remember, you will be sometimes the pianist for your own choir. I can guarantee that. Either in the initial stage or, sometimes you might have a pianist come in the last few rehearsals before a concert. Sometimes you might have the pianist come in for 1 or 2 rehearsals before a concert, if that's all you can arrange. And then in what I would call the worst case scenario is the conductor or the director having to play for their students in performance. Why is that not ideal? Because then the relationship between you and your students and the gestures of your conducting pattern, they become almost irrelevant. And we can talk about how to get around that. And that would be, the quick answer is also working on some a cappella music so that you are not stuck behind the keyboard the whole time playing an accompaniment, but that you are in front of them and they are becoming sensitized to symbols, the representation of sound in your gesture. So I think that pretty well covers this piece in terms of its relevance to the choral music evaluation form that you filled out. Please bring me any questions that you have for tomorrow's class, and I'll try to clarify those further. And the issue with tessitura is just going to be some trial and error for you. The fact is that 5 of us could come up with 3 or 4 different exact intervals. We could have a little disagreement about it, but it shouldn't be more than a whole step, either high or low. I mean, mostly we should all be able to see, okay, within this 5th or this 6th at the very most, these parts. And I'll try to clarify that in class if there are any questions. So thank you. And again, sorry, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.